Ban, the old Chew boy wielding a penta, farming derelict defense. This is what people used to consider to be the pinnacle of AoE farming back in the day. Nowadays, you wouldn't even think about doing something like this. The original explosive weapons, or AoE weapons in general, weren't all that great. We have things like the Ogress, which was just terrible, and the Penta, which was, not as bad, but definitely not great. But as time went on, all weapons, not just AoE weapons, became better and better and better. And nowadays, we have things like this, and even this. Basically weapons that are completely and utterly brain dead. You aim them in the general direction of the enemy, and as long as you have enough AoE, the enemies are all gonna die once you pull the trigger. Now, one thing I find fairly interesting about the situation is that I'm actually a part of the problem this time around, which isn't usually the case. I will happily sacrifice some DPS and go with the Big Boom chat setup over a DPS anti-build, because Big Boom is just gooder. I'm actually the worst kind of AoE idiot because I also like to run Inaros Prime with Prime Sure-Footed, which means I really don't need to aim these weapons at all. But even I, an explosive connoisseur, must admit that some of the newer weapons are a little bit over the top. I absolutely adore the Tonkor and the Kuva Tonkor, partially because it reminds me of the Thumper from Tribes, but something like the Tenet Envoy is borderline boring. I will absolutely take advantage of the Tenet Envoy and farm stuff with it, particularly on Zariman when I'm looking for plumes and stuff, but even I can see that the Tenet Envoy just has too much damn AoE, especially if you put on Primed Firestorm. At that point, you're not even shooting at the enemies, you're not even shooting near the enemies, you're just randomly shooting the ground and enemies are dying all around you. I never thought it was too big of a problem though, because of two reasons. Number one, I mostly play on my own, so if I'm blowing stuff up, I'm only blowing stuff up for myself. And number two, AoE weapons generally do less damage than other weapons. But it has apparently become quite crazy recently in public squads. It has actually become so bad that it is pretty much inevitable that AoE weapons are going to be nerfed in some way, shape or form. And it wouldn't be the first time AoE weapons got the old nerferino. Most AoE weapons were changed multiple times. In the case of the Tunkor, for example, that one started off with no self-damage, then they added self-damage, then they removed self-damage and added self-stagger, and then they gave us ways to mitigate the self-stagger. So in the end, it's basically the same as it was, except it now detonates on impact. Then someone had the genius idea to shrink the ammo pools and ammo reserves for all explosive weapons, which resulted in the weapons like the Kuva Brahma having a grand total of 6 arrows, which doesn't necessarily change the potency of the weapon, it just makes it more annoying to use and forces you to use ammo mutation. So what do you do with AoE weapons to make them less effective but not nerf them into the ground and effectively kill them? Well, you could reduce the AoE, or you could increase the damage fall off so that they don't do quite as much AoE damage, but you need to be really careful with that, because if you push it too far, then there is no reason to run them over a normal weapon. You could change the way explosions interact with line of sight, because right now they pretty much blow through everything. Or, and I know this is something that a lot of you won't like, I would actually be okay if they made it so that explosions had a negative status multiplier on them, so that when you proc slash with an explosion, it only does like 50% of the damage it normally would if you were to inflict it with a single target weapon. Basically make explosive weapons more, well, explosive. You get a big boom, you get big damage, but that's it. That's what you get. The one thing I don't want them to do is make explosive weapons more annoying to use. Add things like self-stagger or restricting the ammo pools, that kind of stuff. That doesn't change anything, it just makes the thing that everyone likes doing less fun. There's a reason why people like to use AoE weapons. It's a great combination of efficiency and fun, for the most part. So taking away the fun so that people don't want to do it is not the way to go in my eyes. Which is why I'm making this video. I want to know what you guys think would be the best way to deal with this. Would you reduce the damage? Would you nerf the AoE? Would you increase the fall off? Or would you rather prefer they'd stay the way they are? Please let me and everyone else watching this video know in the comment section down below. And as always guys, I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.